Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. And welcome to today's bonus, which I will say, without a shadow of a doubt, is absolutely mind-blowing. And the links that I'm going to share in the description to one of the articles, in my personal belief, is without a shadow of a doubt proof that these creatures are hunting humans. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, it takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's bonus, shall we? The link to the very first part of today's bonus is in the description below. And I do have to say, it is quite gory. If you have any little ones around, do not open the link in front of them. Without a shadow of a doubt, this person was attacked by a dogman.
This first part of the upload is a very interesting and very frightening confirmation to me that the dogman is actually hunting us. This article was from a medical journal, and I will actually put the link to the journal in the description. That way you guys can see the pictures, because they are too gruesome for my channel. And please don't email me for the pictures, because I don't have them. Follow the link and you'll be able to see them, okay? Now, interestingly enough, the reason why I feel this is a dogman attack is because a couple things. Once you see the photos and once you hear the article, but interestingly enough, the location, state, county, anything was left out purposely. I believe that it was a dogman attack. It was in a medical journal, like I said. And I believe that the government allowed the medical journal to talk about this case because there are numerous cases, new ones especially this day and age, coming to the hospitals. So let's get the doctors ready for these events. Just give it a listen and you'll see what I mean. A 30-year-old female patient presented to the emergency department after a vicious animal attack. The patient was in excruciating pain after she was attacked by an unknown animal. In addition to this, the patient endured significant wounds to her left leg, forearm, shoulder, back, ear, and face associated with skin, tissue, and muscle damage. For further evaluation, she was prescribed imaging, including rabies vaccination, antibiotics, and a tetanus booster. The imaging showed no signs of fracture. The wound was thoroughly evaluated by a trauma team. Similarly, considering the nature, size, and contamination of the wounds, a multidisciplinary intervention with plastic surgery was indicated. The wound on the patient's leg measured to be 15 centimeters in height, 12 centimeters in width. The wound had an extensive skin and subcutaneous tissue and muscle involvement, including soleus, Fibularis longus, and gastrosemus. Although the patient did not show any signs of vascular injury and had a full range of motion with sensation intact, the patient was told to continue the antibiotics. Compressive wraps were placed and the leg was splinted to prevent contracture. The patient returned to the OR 4 days after the procedure, and her lower extremity was irrigated with betadine and a DRT, dermal regeneration template, was placed. On follow-up, the DRT showed excellent take with no signs of infection, seroma, or hematoma. In addition, a meshed splint thickness skin graft was stapled in place. Moreover, the patient regularly visited the outpatient clinic for follow-ups for several months, and the splint thickness skin graft was seen to have 100% take. Similarly, a donor site showed appropriate healing. Now, when you do follow the link, these wounds are gruesome, so those of you who have weak stomachs, don't check it out. Just trust me on that. But for those of you who do, once you see it, once you hear what I just shared with you, and think about why this medical journal was allowed to share this, but didn't include the state or county or anything, it's almost like it was a prep for what is to come, what the doctors and specialists are to expect. Like the government says, all right, these things are, 2021 was a savage year for attacks. Let's get the doctors ready. Today's second part of the upload. It's worth mentioning, in the United States Infantry, Army, P is a police officer. Both have been in firefights and keep calm. We are freaked out. My heart is racing just thinking about this. Before I start sharing this, just so you know, before last night I've had 0 encounters with paranormal, cryptids, or anything of the sort. They interest me as stories and such, but I never put too much stock into them. 2 nights ago, myself and my friend P were out hunting in my timber in Illinois. It's a large area with miles of woods and fields surrounding it. There isn't a town for about 10 or 15 minutes, depending on which direction you go. Anyway, we're out last night at sunset, and a bit beyond that when we start to get this weird feeling. We set our bait in the fields, and things are fine. No bites or yotes yet. We decide to move our bait closer to the timber and post up on top of some hay bales and sit along the timber line. We had our backs to the woods. We started hearing noises, but chalked it up to raccoon, possum, etc. We also saw some deer right before we sat up. We started to hear this weird whistling sound coming from off in the distance. It started as soon as we got near the area with the woods. At first it sounded like a bird, but it sounded weirdly metallic, broken sounding, and extremely consistent. It off as a bird for a while and went back to our hunt. We both had AR-15s and 9mm handguns. The whistling continued, and it unnerved us more and more as it happened. It started happening across the field at another tree line. We started to get feeling that we were being watched. We later theorized that the whistling might have been some sort of communication or tracking method. We started to get more and more spooked till we left to go pick up some of our friends. We were going to do a bonfire there, so we head back to the car, which is parked along another section of woods. When all of a sudden everything goes quiet. The wind stops, the bird stops, the bug stops. Silence. Then all of a sudden we hear the whistling again, and it's coming from every section in the woods. There's rustling coming from everywhere. We jump into the car fast and haul out of there. We go and pick up our friends who really don't believe us. A and C believe in cryptids and paranormal, but think we may be imagining things. Well, another A thinks that we're just being paranoid. So anyway, we pick them up and head back to the area. We'll call it Moody Farm. And we want to check things out. So we load up the rifles, distribute guns, and head out. A and A stayed back at the car, while P, C, and I went out and looked around. The whistling started as soon as we got out there, and C started to realize that maybe we weren't lying or playing a prank. This is where things start to get really pinging my danger signals. Like crazy, we push further along the trail and start looking for where our bait's located. Before we left the last time, we said out loud that we'd check it when we got back. We reached the bait and still heard the whistling. I get this random thought that maybe the bait is now being used for us instead of the coyotes. C sees the eyes this time as well and starts to freak out a bit. We pushed further in and we hear this strange noise. I called for a halt. P and I set up a good perimeter as best as we could, instructing C to watch the flank. I call out to the woods instructing whoever's out there to come out, that they're on private property. I'm armed and I will shoot if I feel threatened. Suddenly P yells out, "What is that thing?" I snap over to look and I see this blur of movement from behind the hay bales. It was covered in shadows and I couldn't see it super clear, but to me it seemed as if it was 8 or 9 feet tall, trying to hunch over to around 6, and it was moving very fast. I yell out for everyone to move and I pop 3 shots off at it in my rifle. At first we're moving swiftly, but at ready high. We have P out in front with C in the middle. P is watching the woods while C is trying to cover the bean field. I'm watching flank. We're trying to get back to the group. I catch another blur and pop another 3 shots, trying to lay down some suppressed fire to whatever that thing is out there and following us. The whistles start to ring out loud now, and I hear a large cracking noise from the woods. I give the order to run. We start running in the same marching order, P, C, myself. Every 25 feet or so, I'd turn and fire a few shots off in the woods, in hopes of scaring off, covering our asses against whatever this is. We get back to the car, and A instantly thinks we're messing with them. We load up and head out of there. It may be worth mentioning that we saw a group of deer in the entrance to the field both times before all this started. We drove up to the barnyard where we were going to have our fire and tried to calm down a bit, but it didn't end there. I believe we were chased all the way to the barnyard. I didn't really see any of what happened next because I was reloading magazines and messing around with other stuff. But P and C call out that they saw something look around the corner of one of the barn-like buildings, and then it slinked back away. They also claim to have seen some sort of face looking at us through a hole in the wall. I make the call to leave and we start to head out, except for some reason A cannot see out of her rear mirror and has to have P direct her out. So he's out there extremely exposed trying to guide her car out. I pull up close to them and then jump out trying to help cover, get some extra eyes out there. We eventually make it out and driving back to my house, which is only 3 to 5 minutes away. Flash forward the next day at around noonish, and I get a great idea to go out there alone and check the bait piles. I never made it to the bait. The whistling started really quick. I then heard sounds like something running through the woods, crashing actually through the woods. I've never ran so fast in my life. I've had this strange sense of dread since then. Thankfully, it's gone now because it's making me extremely paranoid. I don't know what you guys think about this, but that's my experience. Today's third part of the upload is a subscriber submission. I have multiple encounters. I have a dog, a Borble, But he's not 200 pounds. He's like the US version. He's mixed with a boxer so they could control the size. But let me get on to my experience. He ran away for some days in the woods. And I'm in Missouri, between the country and city, but mixed urban area, south off of 270 along the river. From me and my brother looked for him when he first took off. We were armed with my P320 and him with his CZ Scorpion. I was walking along the field by the fence, by the woods. We both heard this deep growl. I felt the growl in my bones, like down to the core, like in my skin muscles. They shuddered as it happened. It lasted 3 to 5 seconds, but felt like a minute or two. But I know it could have been because we were still moving, and it only took us 4 to 5 steps. Then the trees to our left started to move as it ran diagonally the way we were going, and I wanted to turn back, but my brother didn't. He never heard of the Dogman or anything of the such. He didn't believe what we heard and ignored the trees, the footsteps we heard. It was excitement for him. And we both only have 9mm, 9x19 P320. His Scorpion has a 9x19 and a 9x21 capability. I use a Vicron 365 SIG ammo, and he had been running 9x21 plus PFMJ and was a weird long 9mm that was 147 grain. I flashed my light to the left to keep my eye out, but he said something just passed in front of us, and I flashed my light. I have an Olight on my gun. He has some cheap crap from a gun show. I pulled my extra light out of my pocket. It's just an MP tack flashlight from Cabela's. He grabbed it and turned it on. The throw was way better than what he was using, so we continued downfield. I never stopped looking around, keeping aware of my surroundings. We get toward the bottom of the field, and the fence continues but curves to the left, so we follow it. I found my dog here before when he ran away the first time months prior, but he was hiding under a bush and came running when I called, like, come on, let's get out of here. But back to current times, we walked past. I was watching 11 o'clock to 7. We crossed at 12 to 6. He had 1 through 5. I saw up in the trees a hulking mass, a blacker than black, the best description of darkness, that the surroundings, and it was 9 o'clock, about 20 feet in the trees. And there was a branch that extended towards us that it was reaching out for. I got my brother's attention in an instant. I said 9 o'clock. He swung left so fast I didn't see him move, and we both had lights on this thing. And in a split second we fired. I shot 6 or 7 shots. He shot between 5 to 8. We saw it hit multiple times around its neck and chest area, and a couple in the bicep. It made this noise and grabbed its left side of its body with its arm that was around the tree, fell and ran off the direction. If we were at 9, it ran 11 or 12 deeper into the woods. We immediately footed back home in like 10 minutes, cleared our guns, and reloaded. I was so shell-shocked I couldn't believe what happened, but ever since then, after my dog came back, I take him out at night between 1 and 3. I've seen something watching him and me with an orangish red glowing eyes. One time, it was a second pair of eyes lower, while the other ones was on him. I noticed them really low, moving towards us, and called my dog's name Loki. The thing looked at me, and I reached in my jacket for my pistol. It jetted off faster than anything I've ever seen before, jumped the gate. I heard it clip the gate on the way out. Ever since then, I told my fiancée not to take him out at night. I'd do it. And why? And she laughed and shrugged it off. I bought a 300 blackout AR-15 and used 125 grain frontier ammo, great ammo for hogs and stuff with body fat, so I think it'll do some damage. But she took the dog out one time when I was on the toilet at like 11 or 12, and I didn't know it. She called my phone yelling, saying, "Come now, bring gun, hurry." So I grabbed basketball shorts off the recliner in our room, grabbed a rope out of the closet, grabbed the SIG and the AR, threw the AR sling over my back, and ran to her and handed her the SIG and said, "What's going on?" She told me and pointed to where I seen the orange eyes before, and said something was out there crouched, because I saw the glowing eyes low at the gate, and they grew in height, taller than the gate. I said, "Babe, you just had your first Dogman encounter." I called the dog and we went in. Now she won't talk. Now she won't walk the dog, period, but I've seen and dealt with its bluff charging at me multiple times when walking him and taking the trash out. Today's fourth part of the upload is a subscriber submission. I've not talked about this experience for quite some time, but first, I live less than a half a mile away from a lady who was killed in Durango, Colorado, and I've lived here in the Four Corners for most of my life. This is a supernatural element to this place, cursed. The ancient ones built multiple ancient cities all over this area, like Chaco Canyon, massive complex, and Mesa Verde. As a kid, my parents bought some property on Ruins Road. It's close to the Aztec ruins. It's another Anasazi complex, and these ancient ones just mysteriously disappeared in the past. My parents got 2 acres east of the ruins and moved us in when I was just about to turn 15 years old. It's a beautiful place, beautiful piece of land right next to the river, but the place gives me an uneasy feeling even after all of these years. When we got settled in, I made friends with most of the neighborhood kids my age. There were 2 girls that lived west of me, and I didn't have a problem sneaking out at night to see Laura. She was the same age as me, and we both had a little crush on each other. So, me being the one who would head out at night to sneak into her room, it was no problem for me to walk down the Ruins Road at night. After a couple weeks of this, I had one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. It was about midnight, and Laura had to go with her parents in the morning, so I was going to head home so she could get some rest. I started back on the trails to Ruins Road, and I heard something moving throughout the cedar trees. I stopped and looked around to try to see what was making these noises. When I stopped, the noises stopped, but every time I started walking, I would hear the same noise coming from behind me. I hastily made my way to the road. For some reason, I figured I would get away from whatever was following me once I made it to the road. It was a very dark night, but the moon was out, and when the clouds would clear, the night would lighten up good enough to see what was behind me. But whenever the clouds would cover it, it was so dark I couldn't see much. I kept hearing the noise, and I kept up the pace. I was moving, for fear was overwhelming, a deep sense of fear, almost like I was going to die. I started to hear this tapping of whatever was behind me on the asphalt, like nails hitting the road. That's when I thought my heart was going to come out of my chest. I stopped and turned around. I could see it now, with no trees to cover it on the open road. It was huge, dark, and terrifying. It was at least 7.5 feet tall. Eyes were glowing red. The silhouette was hulking, broad shoulders, just massive. It was probably 20 yards away from me, but as I saw it might have been closer. I turned and ran as hard and fast as I could. It was right behind me, moving up to me. I ran till my chest was on fire, breathing so hard my legs were going to give out. I didn't know what I could do to defend myself against this beast. I just stopped, falling on my knees in the middle of the road, crying and shaking uncontrollably. I said out loud, "Father in heaven, protect me from this monster." As I kept praying for salvation, a calm came over me, filling my body with a sense of peace. The clouds cleared up and the moonlight was even brighter than before. I got up and faced the creature behind me. I said loudly so it could hear my prayer. I watched it turn and head to the cedar trees on the roadside. I was still scared out of my mind, but felt better about continuing home. I hustled and kept my eye on my back. I never would walk on that road at night, or would ever again. I let Laura know what happened to me. She said that her family has had lots of experiences with weird things happening in the ruins. At that point, I had never heard of skinwalkers, but that's what she was telling me it was. I don't believe it was. It was something that could have ended me, but by the grace of God, it didn't. I don't know if this account is something that you'd like to share on your channel. I have no problem with you doing so. I truly can't say if it was a Dogman, but it was terrifying. This happened in Aztec, New Mexico, 4 or 5 miles down Ruins Road. Thank you for your channel. Well, I'm going to tell you guys something right now. The first guy that emailed me the encounter and this guy, gosh darn it, I'm emailing them and saying, hey, you want to come on the channel and share your encounters? Because they're terrifying. Tonight's final encounter is another subscriber submission, and this one is also from Missouri. Hey Jeff, I've sent you a few emails in the past about other subjects, but I've not told you of my experience. In the spring of 1981, my husband and I went on an overnight float trip on a Monday in Bourbon, Missouri, on the upper Merrimack River. We got out on the river by Joe from Joe's Canoe Rentals. He was to meet us at around 3 p.m. the next afternoon at our pickup point. We camped for the night at the mouth of this cave that was up a wooded hill. Many people used the cave for camping, as was advised. In front of the actual cave entrance was a large stone overhang and stone walls, a large area where people could camp and be out of the rain, so we went to sleep at around 1 in the morning. I was woken by the sound of a large man breathing, and it was coming from inside of the cave. I woke my husband, and he heard it as well. We then heard grunting sounds and sounds of a creature moving around, as if it was getting comfortable. We could hear its fur rub on the side of the wall of the cave. Each time it moved like this, a group of bats would fly out. My husband remembers aggressive sounds and stompings, where he says the ground under him would shake as if it was stomped on. I don't remember that part, but I was distracted by trying to get my legs to stop shaking, as they were shaking so badly and making noise inside of my sleeping bag. I was afraid the noise would draw the creature out. At the time, we assumed it was a bear. My husband told me there was a cliff on the outside wall, but he didn't think I could climb up to it. I climbed it. I'm not athletic, and it was a real rock wall climbing, having to find finger and toe holes. It was up about 10 feet and over 5 feet to get over the cliff. We climbed on it, our feet overhanging the trees on the hill until daylight. I then stayed on the cliff and watched the opening of the cave as my husband packed our stuff up and we left. The rest of the float trip that day was horrible, as the river was narrow and there were tall reeds on each side. I was afraid something was going to come out of those reeds and grab us. We finally met up with Joe and we asked him if there were any bears in Missouri. The Department of Conservation had said at the time there were no bear in Missouri. Joe said, yeah, and we said, well, we had one in the cave last night. What he said next was strange. He said, oh, they're just little honey bears, not much bigger than a good-sized dog. He said, Kansas didn't have any turkeys, and we don't have any bears. So we gave them some turkeys, and they gave us some bears. I now wonder if he just said that all because he knew something was out there and didn't want word to get out that may affect his business. There weren't supposed to have been any bears in Missouri at that time, but we all know how it goes. Most likely there was, but I mostly wonder about my husband hearing aggressive sounds and stompings that shook the ground underneath him. Would a bear be big enough to do that? It doesn't seem likely to me. So we don't know what we had in that cave that night. What do you think? Well, I think you're right. I think Joe is a little crazy. I mean, who says, oh, it's just a honey bear? Not much bigger than a good sized dog. He said Kansas didn't have any turkeys and we didn't have any bear. So we gave them some turkeys and they gave us bear? Joe kind of seems like a dipshit. Sorry, Joe. But yeah, to be honest, I don't think it was a bear. I think you had a possible experience with a Dogman or a Bigfoot. Um, I mean, there's actually discussion on Momo, what the heck Momo is. Is it a Dogman? Is it a Bigfoot? I really don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards a large werewolf-like creature, like Victor talks about, and Kunbo. No tail, but a smaller snout. That's what I think Momo is, the Missouri Monster.
And there you have it, folks. Today's bonus, which I do hope you all enjoyed as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Some terrifying encounters, but that link, the experience that I talked about in the very first part, followed that link and looked at those pictures and read the medical examiner's information. It is just terrifying. And those lacerations and that attack it reminded me of the attack in Brazil, which I have the video clip of the people talking about it. I've never been able to put it up on YouTube. I've tried many times. I've never been able to put it up anywhere, to be honest with you. And it always gets flagged or taken down, even on X. I've tried to even put it on X and it got taken down there, which X has become the Wild West. And for it to get taken down on X is absolutely insane. With that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that keeps this channel growing and going. And honestly, what gives folks like all of us a place to share our experiences and theories, judgment-free, just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth. God bless.